Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Norwich Talk, where Norwich City have just mathematically confirmed their relegation after losing 4-0 to West Ham at Carrow Road in a game that was just incredibly depressing to watch. I'm feeling very dejected after that. I know before the game I was saying I was a bit numb to it all in terms of the fact that relegation has sort of been a certainty for a while, but after a performance like that on a day like today, it's hard to just not sort of feel incredibly deflated, to be honest with you. The thing that I wanted to see between now and the end of the season was just an improvement in performance. We've not had that since the restart, and there's a way to get relegated. I've seen this tweeted a few times. There is a way to get relegated, and that's through performances that show some actual desire, where results can be forgiven, but Norwich City just haven't provided that for us. And the one positive that I take from this is the fact that we've not had to pay to watch it. If we'd have played like this in a packed Carrow Road, I really would have feared for the team. And just sort of the levels of toxicity probably would have risen quite a lot. But yeah, I mean, that's just clutching at straws for positives at that point. But if we look at the lineup of the game, it's the same as Watford. One that I can't really complain about. One that I don't think many Norwich fans could really complain about. But arguably, that's our best team. And if our best team's going to play like that, then we're doomed, and we have been doomed, and that's why we're going down to the Championship. That's Norwich's strongest 11 this season, to be honest with you, and it's played like that against West Ham. It's played really, really poorly and just done absolutely nothing in the game. That's probably the main concern for me this season. I mean, I know relegation is now confirmed. Mathematically, it's been confirmed for a while, hasn't it? But with our best team and a performance like that, it's scary and it's worrying. But it makes the podcast that I did with Stuart Hodge all the more relevant in terms of the fact that should Daniel Farke be sacked, the answer remains no, because next season is his definitive season at Norwich City. But after performances like that, I sort of questioned myself and everything that I said in that podcast. But I think that's just sort of the current emotions sort of running through me at the moment, which are just feelings of just deflation. I think deflation is the key word there, to be honest with you. But if you look at the game, as I've already said, it was diabolical from Norwich, but the goals were so soft from Norwich. The first two goals shared very similar characteristics in the fact that there were two set pieces, and it was just static defending from Norwich. Now, I could sit here and pick apart zonal marking, but I can't really for the second because it did look like a man-to-man. I think Connor tweeted that as well, which sort of reassured me. But instead of doing that, I'm just going to critique the individuals. I think it's Ben Godfrey and Tim Closer. 5'10", Michail Antonio has just been beaten, or has beaten, our two 6-foot-plus centre-backs in the air with ease on both occasions, and sort of just prove that I don't think, one, Ben Godfrey is ready to leave Norwich, and two, that I think Tim Closer is going to have a tough time turning it around at Norwich, especially. The defence at Norwich has just been so poor, which is actually probably a criticism of Daniel Farke in terms of the fact that I just don't think he can really teach a team to defend. He can't coach a team to defend. He can't set up a team to defend, which is quite poor, especially when you're in the Premier League. And at this point of the season, we should probably pinpoint the defence as our weak point, especially given the last few performances. Maybe you'd look to see a little bit of improvement, but there hasn't been that. And as soon as the first goal went in, the game was finished. And I know there was an interesting stat from BT Sport, actually, which was, I think, Norwich are the only team in Europe's top 5 divisions to not gain a point from any game after conceding the first goal, which is exactly why we're going down this season. And we've set a lot of unwanted records. Obviously, our record 5th relegation from the Premier League. Also, the 5th relegation I've seen Norwich City go through in my lifetime. Now, just to remind you, I am only 19, and to see your team relegated for the 5th time is honestly, it's just, I'd say it's embarrassing, but it's just heartbreaking, to be honest with you. It's such a low point, but equally, to sort of balance the scale, I think the highs in football, especially with Norwich City being a yo-yo team, because we are a yo-yo team at this point, I think the lows are worth the highs and the highs are worth the lows, etc. But carrying on with the game, for the first half, we just didn't do anything. There was a couple of decent little passages, but we never looked to threat West Ham, and we didn't really lay a glove on them. I think that's what Glenn Hoddle said after the game, or Rio Ferdinand, because I did actually watch a little bit of the analysis, because I thought it was pretty spot on, although at a time like this it's hard not to be right, because all you've got to do is just point out Norwich's flaws, and there seem to be an absolute abundance of them. There's a plethora of things that you can pick apart and dissect and just sort of use as evidence to prove that Norwich City just haven't been good enough this season. But at half time, the game was done. And then in the second half, do you know, I was expecting some substitutions from Daniel Farke, and it does bother me quite a lot that it's taken 67 minutes for a substitution to be made. Obviously, the subs came on and didn't do anything. Lucas Rupp came on, and the poor guy, he had an absolute horror show. But, who didn't? It is harsh of me to pick that name out, but, he came on and he was pretty poor. But again, it was sort of a copy and paste of the first half. Norwich just didn't do anything, and that was the problem. There was no heart in the performance from Norwich. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say the players have not tried. I think they have, and they just aren't good enough. At this point in their careers, anyway, you look at the younger players, I think they'll go on to maybe have good careers, and you look at the older players for Norwich who have probably peaked this season in terms of the level of football that they'll play at. But there was just no heart in it, and that is what really bothers me, because the main thing that we pride ourselves on at Norwich City at the moment, or we did before this season, was the sort of desire from Norwich and the willingness to combat the underdog mentality, or the underdog reputation, and this idea that Norwich were just going to go down immediately. The one thing we prided ourselves on was the fact that we show such heart and desire in performances, and that we just try so much. But since the restart, it just has been everything but that, which is just... I mean, it's bad enough having to watch football at home, but when your team plays like that, it just ruins your mood completely. But as I said, the one positive is that we've not had to pay for that, because if we'd have had to have paid to watch Norwich City play like that, which we have done before, then I really would have feared for the sort of the general atmosphere within the or not within the club, but within the sort of fan base of Norwich City. But there's not too much to say about the game specifically, to be honest with you, because it was just really diabolical from Norwich. A big massive credit given to David Moyes. I think he set up his team well. Quite early on, he identified the fact that Norwich were terrible down the wings, which is where a lot of their attacks came from. Antonio and Jarrod Bowen, I thought, were really good. Jarrod Bowen is a player I'd love to have seen play for Norwich, because he's just so direct. He's very quick, got an absolute wand of a left foot, although we didn't see the best of it today. And Antonio, I do envy West Ham, and I have for a while, I think, in terms of signing Antonio. I think Norwich were linked with him. I mean, who haven't we been linked with before? But he's such a good player, because not only is he strong and quick, but he's actually really good on the ball, and I think he's very underrated on the ball. I was going to say maybe England worthy, but I think he's literally doubled his goal tally today, so perhaps not. But I do envy West Ham in terms of the options they have there in terms of Antonio, because, as I said, he's just so strong on the ball, and he bullied Tim Closer. Now, I know Tim Closer isn't the strongest player, and quite clearly he came up against a few of them player types in the Championship and struggled. And obviously he's been out for a while, but I don't think he should... It was just really poor. I don't even know what to say, to be honest with you. I don't know how he could have done any better. Ben Godfrey also struggled. I suppose he's got the excuse of inexperience and the fact that he's still quite young, but he absolutely bullied our centre-backs, and I think he sort of reminded other teams who've been looking at Ben Godfrey that perhaps he's not quite ready for the Premier League yet. I don't think any of the team is ready for the Premier League bar Tim Krul. Tim Krul, a player that I feel sorry for I think it was West Ham's third goal. He made a really good save, and then Ben Godfrey's just not contended with Antonio at all, and with ease Antonio has just held off Godfrey to score, and he deserved it. It was absolute man of the match for me. I mean, he scored 4 goals, how can he not? And sadly that's not the first time that a team has scored, an individual has scored 4 past Norwich in the Premier League. Obviously you remember Gini Wijnaldum, and that was the sort of the day Norwich City spiralled. Hopefully today isn't that day in terms of Daniel Farke just losing his marbles and spiralling at Norwich City, although you can argue he spiralled a long time ago given our league position and the fact that we are on track for our lowest points tally, I think, in a league, in a season, rather than just the Premier League. But yeah, they're my thoughts on the game. I think the general thing to take from that is just the feeling of deflation, and I'm just so disheartened because, as I said at the beginning of the video, before the game I went on a few different West Ham channels. I think I was on the radio as well for some Friday football show with Dave Roberts, I think it was, and I was giving it the whole, I've accepted relegation for a while, so I don't think I'll be feeling too much tomorrow, but it's the complete opposite. It's the polar opposite in terms of the fact that it was just humiliating to watch today, and I do feel bad for the players, to be honest with you. It's not anger at all, which I think I'm sort of happy with. I'm glad it's not anger. It's just I feel so humiliated for myself watching it and for the players playing it, because they've just really been. I mean, they've been exposed and they've exposed themselves this season. But Norwich City, just as a club, have sort of been exposed this season on the pitch, of course, definitely not off the pitch by any means at all. But yeah, it's a really sad affair, and I'm going to look through Twitter like I always do, and Facebook like I always do, as much as I probably shouldn't after a game like this. And I'm going to see anger towards the board, towards Daniel Farke, and I'll probably disagree with it. But at the same time, I don't think I have a leg to stand on in terms of defending them at the moment. I think the best time to defend them will be post-season, in a time where I think there'll be a pretty quick turnaround for the next season, because there sort of has to be, doesn't there? But yeah, it's going to be. It's a really weird time. It's a painful one, and it is the fifth again, as I mentioned earlier. It's the fifth relegation I've witnessed as a very young Norwich City fan, which is a small laugh, a little coping mechanism there, to be honest with you. But yeah, I have no doubts we'll bounce back at some point. When that'll be, who knows? I think Glenn Hoddle made a good point of it's not as easy to get out of the Championship as it was perhaps in the past for Norwich City, but we know we can do it. But Daniel Farke, the job he faces, I mean, from now, not just from next season, but from now, he faces such a tough challenge. I believe he'll come out the right side of it. You know, as annoying as it might be, I still do have faith in the man, but he's got a real task on his hands to sort of regain the dressing room and turn some heads and sort of lift a few heads as well. I watched Alex Tetty's interview after the match, and the guy, he genuinely looked like he was nearly in tears, and I feel sorry that we can't repay him with just a successful Premier League campaign. I think he had one under Chris Hughton, and you can argue the success of that, which was his first one, and he's been here for nearly 10 years, is it, or something like that? I think 8 or 9 years maybe. And for him as an individual, I feel so sorry, because he's been so loyal to Norwich. He's been so good for us. He's been such a pertinent figure. And we've seen that this season in terms of the fact that we just can't play without him. I mean, we can't play regardless, but we really can't play without him. And I just feel bad for him that we can't repay him with a successful Premier League season. And he looked like he was nearly in tears. And if there's one player in the yellow shirt who deserves a successful Premier League season, it's Alex Tetty. Tim Krul, another player who I feel sorry for in terms of the fact that we just provide no protection for him. We haven't this season at all. But yeah, I won't pick out any more individuals. But I say that, and my next point is sort of individual based, which is I don't really understand how a team other than Norwich City within the Premier League, that is, can look at any of our younger prospects or any of our players really and think, right, yeah, I'll buy that. Because I think today has just proved, today and the restart has proven that I don't think any of our players are ready for the Premier League. I think they can be, and they will be, providing they stay at Norwich City, and then those who are perhaps a bit older go. But players like Max Aarons, Jamal Lewis, Ben Godfrey today for me, Todd Cantwell as well, with his incredibly questionable Barnet. I think they've proven that they aren't ready for the Premier League. Ben Godfrey gave the ball away so many times. I think today was Max Aarons' poorest game in a yellow shirt, which is a shame, because I regard Max Aarons really highly. I think he's a very good player. Jamal Lewis as well, I've always rated, but I just don't think he's Premier League quality. Thankfully for them, they've got age on their side, and the fact that they've got a lot of time to turn it around. I think they need another season in the Championship to sort of toughen them up a bit, perhaps improve their mentality, strengthen it a lot more. But I do feel sorry for players like Timu Puki, Marco Stiepermann, Mario Vrancic, and Onel Hernandez as well. You can tell it means a lot to him. But these players, Christoph Zimmermann is another example. Sadly, he's not been able to feature since the restart. But I do feel sorry for them, because I don't see them playing Premier League football again. I think a lot of them players are going to leave. I think there's going to be a massive... I'll probably describe it as there'll be a recast within the squad, and the starting 11 will look very different next season, which I think is good. Stuart Webber's got an incredibly tough job on his hands in terms of the fact that he's going to have to make some big decisions, although the sort of whimper that has been Norwich's performances since the restart of football is going to make seeing them sort of players go a lot easier. Because if we'd have stayed up if we'd have put in a really hearty attempt to stay up, I think it would have been a bit more difficult to say goodbye. However, these last few games it's just sort of proven to us that perhaps it'll be a little bit easier. But yeah, they're my thoughts. Make sure you let me know yours in the comments down below. If you can like the video, I'll be grateful for that. If you could comment as well and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Look in the description box as ever for all the social media. We will be doing the review again this year. It's going to be an interesting one, a polarized tone compared to last season's review. But we are going to be doing that again. I'm going to try and get some guests sorted out for that, and that'll be a nice little mini series to sort of. I say nice. It'll be a mini series for you to watch of us going over the season, so we can sort of draw a conclusion to that and move on. Because I think that is the key thing to do at a time like this, is to just move on. But yeah, that is just about everything from me today. And until next time, we'll see you again very, very soon.